Good evening, Hunslet and Riverside Ward. It is Councillor Ray here with my fortnightly live question and answer session where you, the people I'm elected to represent, have a chance to challenge me and ask me whatever questions you like, and I will endeavour my best to try and answer them. And if I can't, I'll go away and try and get you the answers and come back. So welcome as always. We are now live on both Facebook, YouTube and on Twitter. So please start sending those questions in. As ever, I'll start with a couple of local ward updates. And then what we'll do is we'll dive into your questions. So please do get sending those on. So I think we'll just start with kind of the regular kind of update on the kind of COVID situation. So as many of you have probably seen over my weekly updates I do at the end of the week, we've seen that obviously the infection rate in Leeds was increasing. Went from a couple of weeks ago at just over 4 per 100,000 to around about 14. It has now settled at around about 12 infections per 100,000 people. Now, this is still being incredibly closely monitored. There's absolutely no complacency within the council. There are still higher infection rates around us, and the council authorities around Leeds, their additional restrictions are still in place, and they have to be reviewed at a later date. Now, despite that, there are some opening ups of the economy now that went up, such as casinos, etc. And they will continue to open up in areas that haven't got the additional lockdown restrictions. But there's still a huge risk out there of the virus, and though it's stabilised at 12 infections per 100,000 on the 7-day rolling average, as obviously more things open up and potentially as we go towards September, we also have to be really, really mindful. So our really strong message from the council is please do stick to those COVID safe guidelines of washing your hands regularly, wearing a face mask in all indoor venues where you're not going to be around people you normally know, with all the exceptions that are there for things like sit-down service, restaurants, etc. And do try and keep a distance. There is still spikes happening in areas such as Hare Hills and Kirkstone. They are being monitored extremely closely by Public Health Leeds and Public Health England. Sorry about that, everyone. I'm having some internet connections problems today, and it keeps cutting out. So if it does happen again, I'll be back pretty quick. So yeah, we're just asking people to be mindful. In terms of some other local updates, actually, it's been pretty quiet the last 2 weeks. There's nothing really, well, dare I say, extremely interesting happening in the ward. There is a lot of work going on, a huge amount of construction work happening at the moment, and a lot of consultation. So you'll be seeing, like I said before, parks being done, a lot of new building work coming along that was delayed due to COVID. But actually, it has been a very, very quiet couple of weeks. So on kind of like local ward issues, I don't really actually have that much to update people on. So what I will do is, I'm going to check all the comments now with this disconnected mid-conversation, is see what questions have been sent to me in advance or what questions there are in the comments. So let's have a look. And no one's actually asked me any questions at the moment by the looks of it, which is interesting. So does anyone actually have any questions for me, or is this going to be an early one for me, and I get to have an early start to my weekend? So eagerly awaiting. Let's have a look. Sorry about this, with it disconnecting, it might have disrupted the feed to the comments. Let's have a look. Technology. Okay, let's have a look. Click into that. It does look like it's disrupted the comments. Okay, so no, only one comment. So, and it's a hello. So, does literally anyone have any questions for me whatsoever? No. Wow. I can't. I fixed everything in the ward. Surely there must be some problems or concerns people have. I'm not that good. It'd be nice if I was. Have a look. Yeah, let's see if there's anything on WhatsApp. No questions there either. Any live feed questions? Wow, literally no one has asked me a question. This is the first time in 19 weeks of doing these now that no one has asked a question. I don't know what to say. Maybe it's the hot weather. Maybe everything's perfect. Wow, not a single question. No. Well, I'll give it another couple of minutes. Let's see if anyone actually does have a question for me. And if they don't, I'll take that as I'm allowed to go and relax early this week and have an early weekend. In all this time we've been doing this, it's the first time no one has actually asked a question so far yet. I'm a little bit shocked. Let's have a look. Oh no, we've got questions starting to come through now by the looks of it. That's good. So, Margaret, in terms of the face mask, so we have actually had some additional clarification on this today. So the council's putting a lot of resources into making sure, obviously, we get as many people to wear face masks as possible. There's a lot of additional signage going on. I did speak to the Markets Board team accordingly. But we have actually had some clarification around the rules that have come from the government on face masks. It literally came through just before this live feed started. And what I'll do is I'll literally just read it because that's probably the easiest thing to do. So let me just open this up. So in relation to enforcement, shops and supermarkets and other premises where face masks are required are encouraged to take reasonable steps to promote compliance with the law and could refuse entry to anyone who does not have a valid exemption. Transport operators can deny access to public transport services if passengers do not wear a face covering, or direct them to wear one or leave the service if they do not wear a face covering. However, there is no legal requirement or legal responsibility for shops and premises to ensure customers wear face coverings, and there is no enforcement action the local authority or police can take against shops or other premises in relation to customers not wearing masks. Now, that doesn't stop the police issuing fines, but what they're effectively saying is actual clarification of the rules. Shops are required to ask, people are required to wear them, but actually there's no compliance framework to make a person wear them, other than calling the police coming out and issuing an on-the-spot fine. So in that sense, the clarification, actually, that literally just came through just before this started, probably isn't overly helpful for that compliance. So the government is quite clearly just relying on people doing the right thing, which is obviously problematic, because obviously a lot of people are finding face masks uncomfortable even for short periods, even though it's absolutely vital that we wear them. But in terms of the market, we did have that conversation. The trader reps were very much on board with us trying to do as much as possible to make sure people complied. The market management team were very much on board, and we will be doing everything we can do. But as I've said, strictly speaking, with that clarification we've just received today, there's no way to legally enforce it other than politely asking people to leave, and then it becomes a police matter. Can I mention Dazzle in the morning on Church Street Field? Yes, I can, Stuart. So the wonderful people of Dazzle, who do an absolutely fabulous amount of work, particularly here in the south of Leeds, will be doing one of their dancing public sessions on the field next to Church Street, Grove Road Field. And I encourage everyone to go down. If anyone's ever seen any of Dazzle's stuff online, they are absolutely amazing. And they do a huge amount of work, particularly helping disadvantaged individuals and communities. So if you fancy a dance, socially distanced, go down and join Dazzle on Church Street in front of the Penny Hill Centre tomorrow at 10 o'clock, and you'll be able to get involved. Let's have a look. I have a WhatsApp question here. Let's have a quick read with it. Okay, it's in relation to the local lockdowns. Again, if the person who said this question missed at the start of this video, the restrictions are still in place like Bradford and Calderdale. They haven't been lifted, and they will be looking to ask for additional reviews. Other restrictions that were planned to be lifted, such as the opening of casinos, sports, snooker halls, things like that, are going ahead in those areas that don't have local lockdowns. But for the moment, the local lockdowns in the surrounding authorities around Leeds are still in place. And our infection rate as a city is 12 out of every 100,000 residents at the moment. So well below the surrounding authorities, but still something we are keeping a massive, massive eye on. Phil, I have sent the question off about the markings to Highways Leeds. I have not received a response yet because I normally give them about 10 working days to respond before I chase them up. And I think you literally asked 10 working days ago on the last live feed. So I will bob that email off straight after this. To be fair, they've had a massive increase in workload as people have been off work more and people have reported more highways issues to them. And so they are taking a lot of time to get through things, but I will raise that with them because I know it's a really important issue around enforcement in front of garages. I'm really concerned. Yeah, Adam, I get a lot of feedback about this, about the garages, not just on the Midlands in Hunslet, but Rochford Close, Rochford Grove, and they have become a bit of a dumping ground now. One of the issues I have at the moment is, unfortunately, the local housing officers are not fully deployed again yet, and they're normally our eyes and ears about what goes on because they do walks around each of the estate areas they represent every couple of days. I do know the local residents association and the local chair, Stuart, has been reporting these things pretty much daily or every day to me for us to try and keep on to them. I think there is probably a conversation I need to have with our Cleaner Neighbourhoods team, Housing Leeds, and the local residents association about what we do to tackle this. It's this time of year, particularly with what's happened with the lockdown, where people are getting rid of waste from doing DIY, etc. Now, I don't know if it's going to be a kind of one-hit wonder and actually as more normality returns, it gets back to normal. But I'm more than happy to organise a site visit with officers to see what we can do about that, Adam, because I know, particularly for residents in that particular part of Hunslet, it is a really big concern. And actually, you know, it's not fair that residents are doing that to each other. And it's actually cost the council quite a bit of money to get rid of that, and takes officers away from other things like de-weeding, etc. So we will look at that. Let's have a look, see if there's any other questions. Right, this one is about permit parking on Neptune Street in the city centre, so not relevant to everyone, but relevant to residents there. So there were some residents in Timblebeck who had an undercroft car parking, and unfortunately that has been deemed to be unsafe due to fire concerns. Now, what happened was we've removed the pay for street parking and implemented a traffic order to create 10 permit parking spaces for those residents. Those permit invites have gone out to residents, but most importantly, the enforcement signs are being put in place at the end of next week, which will mean it's enforceable. So those residents who do have an issue on Neptune Street because they can't park in their parking space because the building will be deemed unsafe and they'll get evicted by West Yorkshire Fire Service, that will have your permit parking by the end of next week. Let's have a look, some other questions. This one's come via Facebook message rather than on the comments. When will you be doing another Hilary Benn Q&A? John, I don't know yet. I haven't arranged that. Hilary Benn's Q&As on this Facebook page are always incredibly popular, and what I will do is I'm arranging that date with him now. We've kind of informally agreed that we're going to do them every 2 months. So realistically, we're probably looking at the next Hilary Benn Q&A on this Facebook page in It'll be October time, give or take. I mean, I'm a little offended because he gets thousands of views and that, and I don't. But you know, that's life. He's a slightly more important man than me in the grand scheme of things, I suppose. So yes, there will be another Hilary Benn Q&A probably about October time. One thing I would say to people is if they do have any particular topics or concerns they do want to talk about, I am always happy to arrange other question and answer sessions with people, and just get in touch. Let's have a look. Any other questions? This one's come via WhatsApp as well. I always see you out litter picking. Who owns the litter picking kit? There's actually a couple of litter picking kits. Sorry, I've got a bit of a blocked nose. There's one the council owns, which we literally will let anyone use. So if you are interested in doing a local area litter pick in your area, Kathy, drop me a message and I will get you in contact with our Clean Neighbourhoods team, and they will more than gladly book you that if it's available. You just need to go down to the Millshore site and pick it up and take it back after you're done, and walk up and pick up all the bags. There are a couple of other litter picking kits, but they are owned by groups. So the Friends of Hunslet Moor have one. We got one for Kurdish House Leeds, who does a huge amount of litter picking in the area. And then there's some that's owned by some private organisations such as the River Stewardship Company, who do along the river. So if you are interested in doing a litter pick, drop me a message and I will get you over to the right person. The more litter picking, the better. So I'm always up for that. Right, let's have a look. Any other messages? Again, this one's come as a private message. Again, I appreciate not everybody likes to send messages on feed, and this is in relation to what's happening with a Moor Road next to Hunslet Moor following traveller encampments. So what we have agreed as councils, and we actually now allocate the fund, is because of the mounting escalation of costs due to the unauthorised encampments, we will be putting in place something called a traffic regulation order, which basically will give us the legal authority to put a height restrictor just after St. Peter's Court on Moor Road, which will stop any vehicles above a certain height getting past. We have also just put in a reinforced sunken lock access gate next to St. Peter's Court, which will take a very, very substantial angle grinder and a lot of time to cut through. And we will be looking at improving, or should I say restricting, vehicular access off of Burton Road, should I say, and further down Burton Road, where we put the entrance to the new path, the middle bit of the chicane is going in very, very shortly. Now, the Travellers community has a long history with South Leeds, particularly with Hunslet Moor, and these restrictions have literally simply gone in because, or going to go in because of the mounting cost. I am having a meeting with Leeds Gate on Monday. I am committed to trying to find locations in sustainable areas for temporary sites where basically a bond is paid, there's toilets, there's cleaning facilities, all organised in advance. And I am committed to work with the council's land asset management team and Leeds Gate and the Travellers community in general to find those. So I'm looking forward to what will be hopefully a very productive meeting on Monday to try and forward that. But yes, we've done it because we've had to do it because the costs were just getting too high and the loss of amenity to public. Now, it's a supplementary question. Someone's also asked, did it take 2 weeks for the unauthorised travellers encampment on Hunslet Moor to be removed, but only a couple of days on Northcote Plainfield? And it's something to do with something called Section 61 order, which is a police power. So Section 61 allows the police, where they deem substantial public disruption, potential for disorder, or loss of amenity, for them to basically enforce an eviction quite quickly. And Northcote Plainfield it has a team leasing it. So it's basically leased land. They allow the public to access it, etc. But it's leased, I think it's to Beeston Broncos. And they do a lot of there for disadvantaged groups, disabled kids, etc. So the police deemed that it was of the level where actually there was enough disruption and disadvantage for them to enact Section 61. On Hunslet Moor, it's slightly different. The land is public land, but it's not leased, so it doesn't have those formal commercial connections, which sort of put it into the semi-private sphere, because private landowners can evict encampments much more quickly than the public sector can. And so that's why it took 2 weeks for the order. So it's a discrepancy in how the law works. So please just be aware, we're aware of that. But again, it's about making sure that where we do add restrictions to stop access to green public space, we also need to make sure that we're finding appropriate sites for temporary encampments. And I am continuing with that work because we need to find the right balance for everyone. Stuart, the Hunslet Tower chair, just advertising his litter picking kit there. So if anyone's excited to go do some litter picking, Hunslet Tower is willing to give the kit. And actually, I'll do a bit of a sales pitch for them as well. I think it's on, please correct me if I'm wrong, Stuart, but I do think it's on the 3rd of September on a Thursday at 10 o'clock. They'll also be doing some planting in the Hemingway planters to spruce up the Hemingway planters to make that area look more green and pleasant than it currently is. Right, let's have a look, see if there's any more questions. It's not as quick this week, you know, obviously everything's going well for people. Let's have a look. Yes, it is 3rd. There we go, the 3rd. Thank you for the clarification, Stuart. Okay, question on the application at Victoria Riverside for the conversion of the proposed shop to 7 flats. So this planning decision hasn't been made yet. I spoke to the officer a couple of days ago via email. There's some really complex objections that are going in, and the officers have a duty to try and see if they can get past those objections, because there's a presumption of development in a lot of planning policy. I have obviously heavily objected to the conversion of the retail unit into flats, and I will continue to press that case. And if the officers do make a recommendation for approval, I've already made it very clear I will take it to plans panel and I will fight residents' corner on this, because I just do not understand the logic that a retail unit at Victoria Riverside next to 2 massive residential developments on a massively popular towpath along the river as an east to west connection across our city in the middle of an industrial estate is not a great place to have a retail unit for a convenience shop. It just boggles the brain. I will be fighting that corner, but no decision has been made yet. Someone's just asked a question about Winston's on Dewsbury Road and whether or not their license has been granted for alcohol. At the moment, no. It is due to go before the licensing subcommittee sometime in September, actually. Now, whether the applicant decides to withdraw their application for an alcohol license, we will see between now and September. But again, I am intending to attend that licensing subcommittee if the applicant does move forward with trying to get a license for Winston's, and I will vigorously object against that at that license committee and support the public on the grounds of public disorder and crime prevention. Winston's getting an alcohol license is not something I'm in favour of, or is West Yorkshire Police, or is pretty much any authority in Leeds. Flower planting, yes. So we're doing. Someone asked a question around what's happening with biodiversity improvements in the world. Something that I've mentioned quite a bit in these live feeds. So a couple of updates. The green area in the middle of the Hunslet estate, colloquially known as Hunslet Common and or Midland Green and a few other things, we have just authorised 6,500 bulbs to be planted in the middle of that estate, to be planted by our Parks and Country team. And effectively what will happen is we'll plant them so that they bloom at different times of the year, so that you get this movement of colour. We have also just authorised as well 2,500 bulbs to be planted on Hunslet Lake Park, which is next to the Arvingtons near Middleton Railway. Again, that will be planted in such a way as to allow a movement of colour throughout the year to make sure there's some visual appeal and actually to improve biodiversity. I am having a meeting with our parks team and with a number of other people over the next coming weeks. It's a quiet month in August for the council around locating other biodiversity improvement sites. I am really keen to be working on our hedgerows. Sorry, hedgerows are our grass curbs along the road, which I think some of them will be really good for tree planting because they're big enough, and others I think will be absolutely superb for, again, managed planting arrangements to, again, allow the movement of not just visual colour throughout the year, but actually importantly for bugs, because we need lots of bugs, and if we don't have those bugs, well, there's a lot of damage on the ecology front. So that's working. And this is a side issue to that. I'm having a meeting with our tree planting team on Tuesday, so that we can start mapping out formally where we're going to be doing some substantial sapling and mature tree planting in the ward. This ward has the lowest tree density, or one of the lowest tree densities in the city, at 11%, and it should have about 33% of its area covered with some form of tree canopy. So there's a huge amount of work to be done, and I'll be having some meetings about that next week. Evening, Denise, I'm sure you'll have some questions brewing for me. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Question around that green up. Not quite sure what that question is. I'll read that again and come back to it in a minute, because I'm not quite sure how to answer that one. Let's have a look. Any other questions? Let's just reread that one. Right. Okay. I get that now. So the question that's been sent is in relation to parking enforcement, and about when is it the police and when is it the council. So there's civil parking enforcement, and then there's traffic breaches, traffic code breaches. So where there's double yellow lines or parking restrictions, like the zigzag lines or no parking here, as long as it's been put in by the council and has what's called a traffic regulation order behind it, it's us as the council. And we have a traffic civil enforcement officer who goes around and does that for us. So it's us. So if there's problems like that, we just need to know and we'll do it. Where there's no council put yellow lines and stuff like that, it has to be deemed to be a traffic infringement under the police's powers, and they will only get involved in specific reasons. So that's where a road is blocked, effectively, where said parking is dangerous, or where it causes an obstruction which prevents people, say in a wheelchair, a scooter, or a pram getting past. So, for example, if someone parks on the path and a pram can get past, or a scooter, it's not illegal. Though it's weirdly illegal to drive on the path. So how it magically appeared on the path, who knows? It just popped there. But a lot of the law is about seeing it to prove it. But so if it's on the path and it's obscuring it, then as I said, it's blocking it, it's a traffic issue for the police. They will come and enforce. Where there are double yellow lines and they've parked on the path, so they're not on the double yellow lines, they're on the path, and there's not an obstruction, because there's double yellow lines, they've actually breached the parking restrictions put in by the council, so it's the council who enforce, whether there's an obstruction or not. So a lot really depends. So if you do have parking complaints, I know a great number of you do because you send them to me. If there's parking restrictions put there by the council, it's us. If there's no parking restrictions, the police will only deal with it if it's blocking a pram, a wheelchair, or a scooter to get past, or where that is dangerous or blocking the road. Otherwise, they ain't going to enforce it, is the honest answer. Let's have a look. So in terms of the food that's getting distributed, so at the old Coburn Centre along the Longroyds, they are they're acting as the cultural food hub. So there are certain groups in Leeds because of their dietary requirements, which aren't necessarily medical related but are culture related due to faith, that are in need of food assistance because of what's going on with the pandemic. What the Hamara Centre does, and there's someone else in, I think East Leeds doing it as well, is where those special dietary requirements are needed, they are acting as the people distributing that. So basically the council, it has contracted them to basically manage that and get those cultural food supplies out to the relevant people who are in distress, making sure that we obviously manage not just providing the necessities of food, but also doing it in a sympathetic way which respects their cultural needs. And it's a really complex operation, actually. So there's quite a lot of, when I went in, there's not just the kind of Southeast Asian foods we would expect for an area like ours, but actually they're also supplying some of the special dietary requirements to the Romanian community, to the Polish community, to many of the different African nations that call Leeds home, that have special dietary requirements. So actually, when I went, I was incredibly shocked at actually how detailed it was, and actually at how many, and this is ignorance from my point of view, actually the complexity of those specialist dietary requirements many of the communities we have in Leeds call home. Because I think we all kind of get some of the big religious ones, but actually there are other cultural dietary requirements that can actually make getting those basic supplies really difficult if you are on a low income and can't access some of those more specialist shops that supply them. So really, really, really interesting stuff. What they're also doing there as well, and I'm really proud, I didn't know this was right, but I'm really proud of this, and they're going to make this permanent, is the central baby bank that was based at the St. John Centre in the city centre. They're now actually redistributing that work out to communities. And the early years intervention and help team at the council is going to have their baby bank there. And essentially what they will do is, mainly women, but not exclusively women, but people with young children in financial distress who don't have some of the basic necessities for their kids, particularly young babies, etc. Well, predominantly young babies, etc. They will act as a distribution for emergency supplies, which is really good. And it's particularly important for, say, mothers who are fleeing domestic violence and things like that, who actually, because they're fleeing, they may not necessarily be taking the baby clothes or the phone charger they need to keep in contact with people to make sure that they're safe. So I'm really, really chuffed that not only are we helping support in this ward via Hamara, the cultural food hub for our really diverse communities here in Leeds and particularly the South, but also for those really vulnerable women who are maybe due to financial reasons or fleeing domestic violence, to get those emergency and essential supplies for their young babies. Something I think we should be very proud of, and just shows what a kind of caring and inclusive community we are in South Leeds. Let's see, any more questions? Let's have a look. Do I think there will be a local lockdown in Leeds? I have literally no idea, and I think it has to be driven by the data. Like I say, we do know of some hotspot areas in Kirkstall and Hare Hills, and they're getting special attention at the moment. Other areas are being monitored accordingly to make sure that they are being watched. But we're at the mercy of each other in that sense, and we just have to see how we all respond to the restrictions we have to do. I hope there aren't any restrictions, but we do need to be aware of that. Stuart, yes, there is also a baby bank running a waffle that covers LS10, and I apologise. I said I was going to make note of that onto my Facebook page, which I will do this weekend to make sure they get some advertisement, because again, that's been set up for someone doing some great work to support people in need in these challenging times. Right, so I've run out of questions and we've got 10 minutes to go. So does anyone else have any other questions they would like to ask me? Any comments, any feedback? Is there something I'm doing wrong? Is there something you'd like me to focus on over the next weeks and months. This is your chance to do it now. I'll send it to me later, so please do go ahead. Let's have a look. Is anything coming via email? Let's have a look. No, nothing there. Nothing on WhatsApp, nothing on Facebook, nothing on Twitter, and nothing on YouTube. So I'll give it another minute just to see if there's any couple of minutes, see if there's any questions coming through, and then if there's not, we'll call it early quits. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Right, a question here from someone from Leeds Dock about noise disturbances around fireworks. This is the Muntaz. Is it Muntaz question? So, there have been over a number of years an issue at Muntaz where fireworks have been let off and they shouldn't be. As an antisocial. In antisocial way. Now, in all fairness to the current owners of Muntaz, they have come down extremely hard on this. I was meant to be having a conversation with them this week, but I've not had a chance because of a variety of meetings. To be fair, they've come down quite hard. They've been very strict with future people about using drums and fireworks who book the venue out for weddings. But as a side note, the council is now actually doing a consultation on applying for an injunction on fireworks across the city, apart from organised community events and some smaller gatherings. Because of this, actually, we are, and there's a number of issues to this. One, I mean, I've had a firework fired at my head about a year ago, which was quite disturbing. It was the night before the fireworks night. So, you know, there are people that do use them dangerously. They were aiming at a taxi, to be fair. I was walking past at the time and literally nearly got hit in the head by one. But actually, on a more general point, apart from the antisocial behaviour, there is a lot of distress calls to animals. There's actually a lot of distress calls to adults. You know, we sometimes forget in these conversations about autistic adults or adults that have other sensory issues where actually the loud bangs cause a huge amount of distress. And so we need to be mindful of that. I'm of the opinion, and it'll be my submission to the consultation, that I don't want to restrict access to fireworks, but I do think we need to start looking at the low noise fireworks now much more heavily. And where possible, we should restrict fireworks to public events where there are, particularly loud ones, where there are controls. Because we do have to be balanced where possible. Denise, the barrier across Mile Road, I did mention it earlier. We have approved the traffic regulation order and the funds for the barrier. It's come to about a £10,000 cost, though that will obviously save quite a bit of money in the long term due to preventing unauthorised encampments. There is a legal process that has to be gone through with the courts when it comes to a traffic regulation order and consultation on whether people want it or not. So we have to follow the proper legal process. And I'm now working quite hard with officers to make sure that we go through that legal process appropriately and legally, but that as soon as that is done, that barrier goes in as quickly as possible. So I can't give a exact date at the moment, because again, a lot of it is going to be around how quickly we can get it put in once we get past that statutory, legally required consultation process. So as soon as I know, the community will know, because I know it is an issue of great importance to them. Let's have a look. Any other questions? Let's have a look. Yes, if you send me a location of where you would like a bin, I will ask officers to consider it. Councillors are the kings of bins, so kings and queens of bins. So if you do have an area where you'd like a litter bin, yeah, do just bob me a message and I will ask officers to consider it. Let's have a look. So we've got 5 minutes left. Does anyone have any other questions or comments for me over the next minute or so? Otherwise, as I said, we'll call it quits for this week, because you can always, or this fortnight I should say, because you can always get in contact with me via my contact details, which are going across the bottom of the screen now. I'm always available during reasonable hours to answer questions. So any other questions or comments you would like to ask me now before I wish you all a wonderful weekend? Let's have a look. Nothing via email, nothing on WhatsApp, nothing on Messenger, nothing on YouTube, nothing on Facebook Messenger. So it looks like there are no other questions. So what I'll do is I will call it an early night. We'll call it 5 minutes early, so you don't just hear me rattling on about how I've had no questions for 5 minutes. I will just leave with this parting message. Obviously, have a really great and safe weekend. The weather looks like it's going to be lovely and warm, but do try to do so in a safe and manner for you, your family, and the community. And when you are in those closed public spaces with people you don't normally associate with, do wear those masks, even if they are irritating. 15 minutes of wearing a mask in a shop is better than contracting the virus or infecting somebody else. Do try to keep socially distanced where possible. Do wash your hands and try and enjoy the warm weather over the next couple of days in a really safe way. Other than that, I am available to you anytime you need to ask me anything. So do drop me a message on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, text, email, or give me a call. Other than that, have a great weekend and speak to you all soon, and hopefully see many of you out and about in the community as we get more used to going out and about in general. See you, everyone.